I was 16 years old when I first came to attend church. That was in Manila. I came from the farm area, the country, and went to college, freshman college, went to Manila, attended my first church service. And one thing that I really appreciated at the time going to church service, during those days, are the choir. I think they used to have like 30 to 40 members of the choir, and they really sing well, during services. So as a young man, that was a dream I had, because I never had music growing up, and I wanted to be a member of the church choir. And I found it really exciting. So they announced more volunteers are needed. And so I volunteered to be auditioned. And I was there to be auditioned, and of course, the choir director gives you this test of do, re, mi, fa, all this, and and all of this. And I did the same, and I did that myself, and the director said, I think it's best for you to arrange chairs and set up, the sound system. I was a little bit down, discouraged, and maybe I said, maybe because he's old, he doesn't appreciate my youthfulness, But not a long time that choir director became a pastor. So they put in a younger choir director who is only 2 years older than me. And I said, oh, it's a friend of mine, And now I'm going to try again. And so he will really see that I have such a good heart and I want to be a member of the choir. So I auditioned again, for the same test. Failed again. Didn't make it. And so I settled with the thing they do at the back, doing sound system and all of that. But I understand, of course, I understand fully why I didn't get accepted. I mean, I just looking back, I don't want to be one of the reasons for the falling away of many in church, if I ever sing. It's not easy to audition people, especially when you need certain skills. I understand that. And so I pray even today. I pray to God. God, I pray that when I am in the kingdom, that I can participate and sing with the angels. That's my prayer. But imagine yourself being Samuel the prophet. And God says to you, I want you to pick the next king of Israel who will replace Saul. Assuming you are going to be Samuel, and you're going to pick the next king, what will be the qualifications that you will require for the next king of Israel? I'm sure there are things that come to mind, you would think of those, but let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 1 to 7. Let's go to 1 Samuel. You can check that script. This is the story of Samuel, and God said this to him. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? The story. Saul rebelled, sinned against God. Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. He didn't tell him the name. God said, I have chosen him. Go. I'm relating this story because it is connected with the theme. And we are here now, and God's desire is for us to expand His kingdom and to look at people who are potential staff and workers with Jesus, with God. How do we look at that? What qualifications should it be? Let's go to the next verse. But Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. He was so scared. The Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, this is the father, and I will show you what to do. And you are to anoint me, you anoint for me the one I indicate. So it is a step of faith. Saul may kill you, but he said, just go. Just go, and not really knowing who that person is. And continuing the next verse, and so Samuel did what the Lord said, and when he arrived at Bethlehem, The elders of the town trembled when they met him. Oh, what did we do wrong? I remember when I was a student, and the dean of the university says, Bermie, come to my office. The thing that comes to mind, oh, what did I do wrong? It's human nature, you worry. So anyway, that's what they did. So they asked, and Samuel replied, yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me. Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. So they had a worship first. Continuing. And when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab, the oldest one, and he looks like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Wow! This guy has good track record, good looking, muscles. Surely he said, thinking, the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. It must be him. Right? Next verse. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. It's not him. The Lord, this is a very important aspect of the message. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. Powerful statement. The Lord doesn't see the way we see things. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. When we look at people for leadership, often we say, okay, education, please. Must be a master's degree, a doctorate degree, skills, track. We go through all of this. But here we see that with God, the way he looks at it, that those that he chooses are people who are anointed, godly and anointed. In the list of qualifications, education, skills, and all those other things that corporations use, those are below. But the top two are godliness and anointing. And that's what David had, godliness and anointing. Let's continue with the next verse, verse 8. Then Jesse called Abinadab, and this guy looks like Brad Pitt, looking good, and it's like Troy, and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, God said, the Lord has not chosen this one either. So God kind of spoke to him in spirit. Then Jesse had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, nor has the Lord chosen this one. And Jesse has 7 sons, so there's one after the other, and it must be this one. Must be this one. Okay, must be this 5th one. Maybe 6th one, in all of it. But Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. Again, it's a lesson for us. Next verse. Verse 12. And so, 11. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? There's still the youngest, Jesse. There's one more, the youngest. And Jesse answered, he's tending the sheep. Shepherd. Compared to Eliab and Shammah and Abinadab, all those, they are with the army. They're probably wearing their uniforms with the swords and spears. They look good. And now God said, okay, look at this one. He is tending the sheep. And Samuel said, send for him. There's no other choice. It's the last one, right? Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. So they sent for him. Next verse. And so he sent for him and had him brought in when he was glowing with health and had a fine. He was kind of young, He doesn't look bad, but compared to the brothers, not better. Then the Lord said, rise, anoint him. This is the one. So I think the lesson here in this, for us, as we look at the way the conference went, is that the emphasis is not to become, for us to be the hero, but to be hero makers, as Jillian and Anthony expounded. To be looking at people, to be a hero maker, not to be the hero. But in order to be able to do that, we learn is that we are invited by God. You and I are invited by God to change the way we look at people. change the way we see people, because we cannot imagine to begin to invite, to equip, to train people if we look at them just like Samuel from our physical limited sight. We have to look at people from a different perspective. Look at the poor people from a different perspective. The homeless, the elderly, the young one, whatever category it is, we should look at them from God's perspective, from God's precious sight, the way He looks at people. Even as the way you look at yourself. You and I, sometimes, how do you look at yourself? A lot of times you say, I'm a black Christian. I am a Hispanic. I am a woman Christian. We can put all this description to Christian when the way God looks at you is you are a Christian who happen to be a woman, who happen to be poor, who happen to be whatever it is. But our main identity is we are Christ. And the Bible does talk about God has chosen each and every one of us. He said, you are kings and priests. Can you imagine that? God said, you are a royal priesthood. You are a chosen generation. God picked you. And I look at myself, so what? But God said, I pick you. There's something in you that perhaps we don't see. And so we look at ourselves and I don't think I can. I don't think I have the education. I don't think I have the skill. No, God picked you, His own choice, because He knows that you will make a great king and priest. You are chosen. There's something in you that God can see that perhaps you don't see right now. He said, oh, I'm 85 years old. No, God can see something else. So that's the point of the whole thing is we have to see people, we have to see the way things are happening in the world all through God's eyes. And we have to repent. God, forgive us and help me to be able to see the way you see things. So today I'd like to share with you 5 ways, 5 things how God sees things. Number one, God sees beyond limitations. That's who God is. I mean, the example is that of David. David is a shepherd, right? But God saw beyond that limitation, and He saw in this young shepherd the King of Israel. The King of Israel. When, we have young people here sometimes, Anthony Walton, I remember when he volunteered 5 years ago. He was in college. He was still struggling to go through college. But God saw through him a pastor. With Jillian and many others here, our young ones here. Jillian saw something in Caitlin. The way God sees, and all of us, nobody is exempted. You are special in God's sight. God has seen in you the potential to become His kings and priests. You are chosen, despite all the limitations you may think. So God sees beyond limitation, and so God invites you and me. Can we see beyond the limitations of people? Do we say, a lot of times, we think of that, he's Hispanic, so He reserved for him the Hispanic ministry. We limit, or he's a woman, he'll make a good secretary, or she's a woman. She's a woman, she'll make a good secretary. You know what I mean? All these things that we immediately put because of we think it's limitation. Is that the way we look? But God says no, differently. So the second one is, this is how God sees. God sees beyond reputation. Beyond the reputation of people. A lot of times we look at people's track records. I don't like the past of this one, got pregnant, before God, all of these things in mind, and this reputation, and this criminal record. That's how we look like. We don't like this person, he was in jail. We don't like this person, he was a drug addict. We can look at this, but with God it's different. In fact, God chose people in Jesus Christ's bloodline who have bad records. Jacob is a deceiver. Solomon, an idolater. King David murdered Uriah. Bathsheba, also with David, an adulterer. Tamar, and Rahab were immoral in their records. I mean, all of this, including all of us, we all have our own bad records, but God saw beyond our reputations. The power of the grace of God, the grace of Jesus, and His blood is able to cover whatever, all those reputations, whoever we are. So, questionable reputation, don't worry about it. God sees the goodness and the potential that you each have. Jesus Christ has tax collectors, He had fishermen, He had prostitutes all around Him. That's Jesus. Right? It didn't matter what their backgrounds are. Number 3, this is how God looks. God sees beyond people's pasts. Corporations, as I say, they look at your past and your track record. Jesus did not use past history. He didn't consider who was Mary Magdalene, but he became a disciple. She was the first one to preach the gospel, the resurrection. Your past sins, our past bad records do not define us. Your past sins, they don't define us. That is the essence of God's grace. So in the same way, God invites us. When we look at people out there, considering that we want to reach out to them and present the grace of God, look at it from God's eyes of love. Doesn't matter what the past is. Look at people through God's love. And, I'm seeing that more and more. As you know, I'm working with the homeless people. We have addicts and criminals and all kinds of situations. But I think that's what God wants us to see. The one in the conference, they mentioned, one of the Indian guest speaker talk about, there was a pastor in India, and they saw this man who was deaf, dumb, cannot speak, and just staring. And then this pastor's wife invited this man into their house and took care of this man for 4 years. After 4 years, this man spoke. To make the long story short, this man is now pastoring a number of churches. Just took that chance. I mean, to me, wow, isn't it? I mean, none of us here probably would take a homeless person in our home and take care of them. But this person is just full of grace. So it's beyond that. So God says beyond past. That's God, right? And then another way God looks is God sees beyond logic, beyond reason, human reasoning. Peter experienced this when he saw Jesus and he stepped out of the boat. Now, is that logical? To step out of the boat, is that logical and reasonable? Crazy, right? I mean, that's a crazy. See, God's realm goes beyond logic and reason. God's realm dwells in the impossible. And that is faith. So we see things through the eyes of faith. And that's what happened. I mean, we don't ever underestimate what God can do. So God is inviting you and me to begin to see that God does the impossible things. Let us not limit what God can do through any human being, even if they're homeless, even if they have sickness, whatever it is. God can do it. He's the God of miracle. Because you yourself, God saw your potential. So let's look at the poor. Let's look at the rejects of the society. Let's look at those who are difficult and all of this, but look at them through God's eyes. And fourthly, God sees with a purpose. And what is His purpose, desire? The desire of God is that all human beings come to salvation and that none would perish. That's a desire of God, and He does that with love. In fact, with Jesus, it's kind of an important thing to mention. When you look at the life of Jesus, 73% of His time was spent with the 12. 73%, meaning 49 events in the New Testament, the Gospel, 49 events of Jesus was lived with the 12. So Jesus was really a hero maker. Only 17 events Jesus spent with the masses, the people. So for Jesus, we see that that is important. In growing the kingdom, we not only think of how can I grow as a leader, how can I grow as a minister, but God wants us to change that perspective, see it from His perspective is, how can I multiply myself? Everyone, I mean, this is not just for pastors, but it's for everybody, all of us, because that's what we desire. Instead of just adding something, but multiplying what God can do through other people. Like Jesus is the hero maker. And that's why when Jesus said, I think Jillian said, because of that, it will be amazing that the disciples will be able to do more things than Jesus Himself. And that's difficult to comprehend, that that's Jesus, he said, because Jesus multiplied Himself 12 times. Then they multiplied themselves and kept on multiplying. So change the way we think. 1 Corinthians 1:28, you don't have to go there, but God said, God calls the base of the world. Does that encourage you? God calls the zero to become heroes, hero makers. That's God. You know, I mean, so it doesn't matter how the world looks at us. What matters is how God, you know, perceives things, how God looks at us, not how people look at us. Philippians 2:5, it says, let this mind of Jesus be in you. It is an invitation for all of us. Change the way we think. Begin to think as Jesus thinks. Let the mind of Jesus be in you. You are chosen. I mean, that to me is so very encouraging. And I pray that I will be one that will keep on looking for opportunities for others to grow. One thing that comes to mind though is I have this inkling that someday when I will be in the kingdom, all of us here will be singing with the angelic choir. Will you join me?